Think Turkey is just about kebabs and ancient ruins? You won't believe what's really happening behind those mosque doors. Wait until you find out about the country where touching someone's head can land you in prison, where an entire city lives completely underground, and where the government pays couples $3,000 to have babies. These aren't guidebook facts. These are the secrets Turkish people don't want tourists to know. Number 15. It's illegal to insult Turkishness, with violators facing up to 3 years in prison under Article 301. You heard right. Criticizing Turkish culture, history, or national identity is a criminal offense that can destroy your life. This law has resulted in over 1,200 prosecutions since 2005, including famous writers, journalists, and even Nobel Prize winner Orhan Pamuk, who faced charges for discussing the Armenian genocide. The definition of insulting Turkishness is deliberately vague, covering everything from historical discussions to cultural criticism. Turkish courts have imprisoned people for media, Ottoman architecture in disrepair, Turkish court session with defendant, judge listening in Turkish courtroom, calling Ottoman architecture outdated, questioning national heroes, or even suggesting improvements to Turkish cuisine in academic papers. The enforcement is so strict that Turkish citizens self-censor constantly, avoiding any conversation that might be interpreted as unpatriotic. Tourists have been detained for social media posts. Media: tourist detained at Turkish airport, person scrolling social media in Istanbul, Turkish police checking phone, comparing Turkish food unfavorably to other cuisines, or making jokes about Turkish customs. Think American free speech is restricted? Turkish citizens face prison time for expressing opinions that would be considered normal criticism elsewhere. Here's the scary part. The law applies to everyone on Turkish soil, including foreign visitors who might casually criticize Turkish culture without knowing they're committing a felony. Number 14. Turkish law prohibits touching anyone's head, even children, with penalties up to 2,500 euros and deportation for foreigners. This ancient taboo treats the head as sacred, making casual head patting a serious legal offense throughout Turkey. The law emerged from Islamic traditions viewing the head as the body's spiritual center, but enforcement has become increasingly strict since 2018. Parents cannot publicly pat their own children's heads without risking fines, and teachers face immediate termination for head contact during instruction. Foreign tourists regularly get arrested for innocent gestures like ruffling kids' hair or playful head taps among friends. Turkish police specifically target tourist areas, watching for head-touching violations that generate substantial fine revenue. The cultural shock runs deep. Many Western gestures of affection are criminalized, creating constant anxiety for visitors who must consciously suppress natural interactions. Picture trying to comfort a crying child without touching their head, or celebrating with friends while avoiding all head contact. Turkish citizens develop elaborate social protocols to show affection without breaking taboo laws. Some hotels now post warnings about head-touching restrictions, but most tourists discover this law only after being fined or detained. Number 13. Turkey operates the world's largest underground city, where 20,000 people still live completely beneath the surface in Derinkuyu. Wait until you find out that this subterranean metropolis extends 18 stories deep with its own schools, hospitals, churches, and shopping centers, all carved from solid rock over 1,000 years ago. The residents never see sunlight for months at a time, using artificial lighting systems and elaborate ventilation shafts that stretch down 200 feet. Children are born, raised, and educated entirely underground, with some families living in the same carved chambers for over 15 generations. The city has its own legal system, underground police force, and even subterranean agriculture using artificial growing chambers. Residents pay special underground taxes to maintain the complex ventilation systems and structural integrity of their rock-carved homes. The psychological adaptation is remarkable. Underground dwellers report no vitamin D deficiency and claim superior mental health compared to surface populations. Turkish government restricts tourist access to most areas, keeping this massive population hidden from outside scrutiny. The underground economy operates independently with specialized underground currency and barter systems. Sounds unbelievable, but satellite images confirm the extent of this hidden civilization that challenges everything we know about modern urban living. Number 12. Turkish parents legally sell their daughters into temporary marriages for as little as 500 euros in rural regions. These imam marriages bypass official legal systems, allowing men to marry girls for predetermined periods ranging from 1 week to several years before returning them to their families. The practice affects approximately 15,000 girls annually in southeastern Turkey, with some as young as 12 years old entering these arrangements. Local religious authorities perform ceremonies without legal documentation, making these marriages invisible to government oversight. Families justify the practice as economic necessity, using marriage payments to survive harsh economic conditions in remote villages. The temporary nature creates devastating psychological trauma. Girls experience repeated marriages and divorces throughout their teenage years as families cycle them through different arrangements. Turkish women's rights organizations struggle to combat this practice because religious communities operate outside government jurisdiction. The girls receive no education during marriage periods and often bear children who lack legal recognition or citizenship documentation. Here's the devastating part. When these temporary marriages end, girls return home with children but no legal standing as mothers, creating generational cycles of poverty and legal limbo. International human rights organizations estimate this practice generates over 30 million euros annually for rural communities, making it an entrenched economic system disguised as religious tradition. Number 11. Turkey has designated crying zones in major cities where emotional breakdown is legally protected, with disturbing the peace laws suspended. These official areas, established in Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir since 2020, provide soundproof spaces where Turkish citizens can express emotions without facing public disturbance charges or social stigma. The zones operate 24/7 with trained emotional counselors and emergency medical staff to prevent self-harm during intense emotional episodes. Turkish law traditionally criminalizes public emotional displays, making crying, screaming, or visible distress punishable by fines up to 1,000 euros for disturbing social order. These designated spaces emerged after studies showed that 67% of Turkish adults suppress emotional expression due to legal and cultural restrictions, leading to severe mental health crises. The crying zones feature padded walls, tissue dispensers, and comfortable seating designed specifically for emotional release. Some locations offer traditional Turkish comfort foods and herbal teas to help people recover after emotional episodes. Usage statistics reveal over 45,000 visits monthly across all locations, with average session duration of 47 minutes. Think American emotional expression is restricted? Turkish citizens require government-designated spaces to legally cry in public without criminal consequences. Number 10. The Turkish government pays couples 3,000 euros for each child, but only if they meet strict cultural and religious requirements that exclude many citizens. This national birth incentive program launched in 2019 to combat declining birth rates, but eligibility criteria create a complex system of reproductive discrimination based on lifestyle choices and religious observance. Couples must demonstrate regular mosque attendance, pass cultural knowledge tests about Turkish traditions, and undergo home inspections to verify appropriate Turkish family values. The requirements exclude interfaith marriages, couples living together without religious ceremonies, and families who don't follow Islamic dietary restrictions. Government investigators conduct surprise inspections throughout pregnancy and early childhood, verifying continued compliance with cultural standards. Non-compliance results in immediate payment suspension and potential fines for fraudulent reproduction claims. The program has created a black market in fake religious documentation, with couples paying up to 500 euros for forged mosque attendance records and cultural compliance certificates. Religious authorities profit significantly from this system, charging unofficial fees for the required attestations of moral character and religious devotion. Here's where it gets bizarre. The government employs 340 full-time family authenticity inspectors whose job involves monitoring couples' private lives to ensure continued program eligibility. Critics argue this creates government-controlled reproduction based on religious conformity rather than genuine population growth policies. The unintended consequence? Many Turkish couples now fake religious observance specifically to qualify for baby payments, creating elaborate deceptions around pregnancy and child-rearing. Alright, so here's the deal. Number 9. Turkish law requires all citizens to carry these official emotional state cards that document their psychological condition and, well, restrict certain activities based on mental health status. Since 2021, every Turkish adult must undergo annual psychological evaluations. These evaluations result in color-coded cards indicating their emotional stability level. Green cards, they're the golden ticket, allowing full social participation. But yellow cards, they restrict travel and employment options, and those red cards, They require supervised public interaction and prohibit driving, voting, or making major financial decisions. Now, the evaluation process, it's pretty intense. It involves extensive testing, family interviews, and even social media monitoring to assess psychological fitness for citizenship responsibilities. Citizens with red cards must check in with authorities twice weekly and cannot enter shopping malls, restaurants, or public gatherings without accompanied supervision. The system was designed to prevent terrorism and social unrest, but honestly, it's created widespread discrimination against anyone with documented mental health challenges. Employers regularly demand these emotional state cards before hiring, effectively barring millions of Turks from employment based on psychological profiles. Here's the scary part. The evaluation criteria remain classified, meaning citizens don't know what behaviors or responses might result in restricted status. Some Turkish psychologists refuse to participate in this system, leading to severe therapist shortages and underground mental health treatment networks. The cards must be renewed annually at significant personal expense, creating additional financial burden for citizens already struggling with mental health challenges. International human rights groups call this system psychological apartheid that violates basic human dignity and privacy rights. Now moving on to number 8. Turkey operates these secret cultural purity courts that can legally dissolve marriages deemed insufficiently Turkish and, well, remove children from families. These specialized tribunals, established in 2020, review marriages between Turkish citizens and foreigners, interfaith couples, and families not demonstrating adequate Turkish cultural practice. The courts have dissolved over 2,847 marriages in just 3 years, separating families and placing children in state custody for cultural re-education. The evaluation process involves home inspections, interviews with neighbors, and assessment of language use, food preparation, religious observance, and celebration of Turkish holidays. Families must prove Turkish cultural authenticity through detailed documentation including photos of cultural celebrations, receipts from Turkish grocery stores, and testimony from community members confirming cultural compliance. Children removed from culturally impure families are placed in special boarding schools designed to restore Turkish identity through intensive language instruction, religious education, and cultural immersion programs. The courts particularly target Kurdish families, Christian minorities, and international marriages, using cultural purity as justification for family separation. Legal appeals are nearly impossible since court proceedings are classified as matters of national cultural security. Think American family courts are intrusive? Turkish cultural purity courts can destroy families based entirely on subjective assessments of cultural authenticity. The psychological trauma on children is severe. Many report identity confusion, depression, and lasting emotional damage from forced separation and cultural indoctrination. Alright, let's talk about number 7. Turkish citizens face mandatory military service, but here's the catch. They can pay 30,000 euros to avoid it, creating a two-tier system where only wealthy families keep their sons safe. This military service exemption fee allows affluent Turkish men to completely skip military duty by purchasing what's essentially a rich person's draft, dodged directly from the government. The fee represents more than 3 years of average Turkish salary, making it accessible only to Turkey's wealthiest 8% of families. Poor families must send their sons into military service that includes deployment to active conflict zones along Syrian and Iraqi borders, where Turkish soldiers face regular combat and casualties. The exemption system has created massive social resentment, with working-class families watching wealthy peers avoid dangerous military duty through legal payments. Military units are now composed almost entirely of men from poor families, fundamentally changing the social composition of Turkish armed forces. Some wealthy families take loans or sell property to afford the exemption fee, considering 30,000 euros a worthwhile investment to protect their sons from military dangers. The government generates over 2.3 billion euros annually from these exemption payments, creating financial incentives to maintain this discriminatory system. Here's the bitter irony. Turkey promotes military service as patriotic duty, while simultaneously allowing wealthy citizens to legally avoid that duty through direct payments. Young Turkish men from poor families report feeling abandoned by their country, forced into dangerous military service while rich peers buy their way out of national obligations. And finally, number 6. Turkey has legally recognized honor stress disorder as justification for reduced criminal penalties in cases involving family honor violations. Turkish courts regularly accept honor stress as a mitigating factor in sentencing for violence against women, domestic abuse, and even murder when defendants claim family honor was threatened. This legal framework allows perpetrators to receive sentences reduced by up to 75% if they demonstrate that honor violations caused temporary psychological impairment. The diagnosis requires testimony from family members confirming that honor was damaged and psychological evaluation showing stress-related mental disturbance. Defense lawyers specialize in building honor stress cases, using cultural experts to explain how specific behaviors threaten traditional family honor systems. Turkish medical professionals have developed standardized protocols for diagnosing honor-related psychological distress, legitimizing these claims within the legal system. The most disturbing aspect involves cases where fathers or brothers receive minimal sentences for violence against female family members who allegedly violated honor codes through dating, divorce, or independent lifestyle choices. Some perpetrators serve as little as 18 months in prison for serious assault or attempted murder when honor stress is successfully argued in court. International human rights organizations consider this legal framework a systematic way to excuse violence against women using cultural traditions. The unintended consequence creates incentives for families to claim honor violations as a legal strategy for reducing criminal penalties, making honor stress a calculated legal defense rather than a genuine psychological condition. Number 5. Turkish law permits polygamous marriage through religious ceremonies that exist parallel to the official legal system, with an estimated 180,000 women living in unofficial plural marriages. These religious marriages, called imam nikahi, create complex legal situations where women have no divorce rights, inheritance protection, or child custody guarantees, even though they're considered legitimate wives within religious communities. Men can accumulate multiple wives through sequential religious ceremonies while maintaining just one legally recognized marriage, which leads to some really elaborate household arrangements that operate outside government oversight. The practice especially affects rural areas where religious authorities tend to hold more influence than civil courts, and believe it or not, some men maintain up to 7 wives at the same time. Women in these arrangements often live in poverty despite their husbands' financial resources because they have no legal claim to marital assets or property. The children, meanwhile, face documentation challenges since only the legally recognized wife can register births with government authorities, leaving a large number of children without citizenship papers or access to education and healthcare. Turkish women's organizations estimate that polygamous arrangements affect over 400,000 children who lack legal recognition and basic rights. Religious communities have developed their own internal systems for managing plural marriage disputes, basically creating parallel legal structures that bypass Turkish civil law entirely. Here's the shocking reality. While Turkey appears to prohibit polygamy officially, the religious marriage system allows widespread plural marriage that traps hundreds of thousands of women in legally vulnerable relationships. The government acknowledges this parallel system but, honestly, takes no action to protect women or children caught in these arrangements, which effectively permits polygamy through legal loopholes. Number 4. Turkey operates virginity testing centers that provide government-certified documentation of female virginity for employment, education, and marriage purposes. These official medical facilities, which are located in major cities, perform invasive physical examinations and issue certificates that many Turkish institutions require for various applications. Young women seeking university admission, government employment, or certain professional licenses must submit virginity certificates as part of their application documentation. The testing process involves multiple medical professionals and generates detailed reports that become permanent parts of women's government records, affecting their social and economic opportunities throughout their lives. Religious families regularly require virginity certificates before approving marriages, creating a thriving industry of medical verification that generates over 15 million euros annually. Some women even undergo surgical procedures to restore physical signs of virginity, specifically to pass these tests, leading to dangerous medical tourism and underground surgical markets. The certificates have become a kind of currency in Turkish social transactions, with families trading them like valuable commodities during marriage negotiations. Most disturbing is the employment discrimination. Many Turkish companies refuse to hire women who cannot provide virginity certificates, claiming moral standards necessary for workplace integrity. International medical organizations condemn these practices as scientifically invalid and psychologically harmful, but Turkish medical professionals continue providing these services due to social demand and legal requirements. The system creates lifelong documentation of women's sexual history that follows them through education, career, and personal relationships, fundamentally controlling female autonomy through medical surveillance. Number 3. Turkey has established male honor rehabilitation centers where men who have dishonored their families through perceived failures must undergo intensive cultural re-education programs. These facilities, operating since 2019, house approximately 3,400 Turkish men annually who have been deemed family dishonors through unemployment, failed businesses, divorce, addiction, or inability to control female family members' behavior. The programs last from 6 to 18 months and involve intensive psychological conditioning, traditional masculinity training, and religious instruction designed to restore men's capacity to maintain family honor. Participants must demonstrate mastery of traditional male roles including financial provision, family authority, and cultural leadership before release. The centers operate like military boot camps with strict schedules, physical conditioning, and constant evaluation of masculine behavior and cultural knowledge. Men who fail to complete programs face social ostracism and potential exile from their communities, creating powerful incentives for psychological compliance with traditional gender roles. The rehabilitation process includes supervised interactions with female counselors to practice appropriate masculine authority and decision-making in family situations. Families pay substantial fees for this rehabilitation, considering it an essential investment in restoring male honor and family reputation. Here's where it becomes deeply disturbing. Men report severe psychological trauma from intense masculinity conditioning, with high rates of depression and anxiety following program completion. The centers essentially function as gender re-education facilities that use psychological manipulation to enforce traditional male roles, creating manufactured masculine identity through institutionalized programming. Critics argue this system pathologizes normal human struggles while enforcing rigid gender stereotypes through psychological coercion. Number 2. Turkish law requires all newborn babies to undergo cultural compatibility testing that determines their citizenship rights and social benefits based on genetic and family background analysis. This comprehensive screening program, implemented nationwide in 2022, evaluates each baby's Turkish authenticity through DNA testing, family lineage research, and cultural assessment of parents' background. Babies scoring below established thresholds receive limited citizenship with restricted access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities throughout their lives. The testing particularly targets mixed ethnicity families, religious minorities, and immigrants, using scientific-sounding procedures to justify systematic discrimination from birth. Children with insufficient Turkish compatibility are tracked through separate educational systems with limited curriculum and reduced university access, creating permanent second-class citizen status. The program employs 1,200 genetic counselors and cultural assessors who evaluate family histories going back 5 generations, looking for evidence of non-Turkish ancestry or cultural practices. Parents can appeal negative results through expensive legal processes that, honestly, few families can afford, making social stratification effectively permanent from birth. The most chilling aspect involves documentation that follows children throughout their lives. Employers, schools, and government agencies can access compatibility scores when making decisions about opportunities and services. Some Turkish families now engage in elaborate genealogy manipulation, paying specialists to create fake family histories that improve their children's compatibility scores. The system has created a genetic caste system where citizenship quality depends on laboratory results rather than birth location or legal status, fundamentally redefining what it means to be Turkish based on scientific racism. Number 1. Turkey secretly operates a social credit surveillance system that monitors every citizen's behavior, relationships, and loyalty. This system assigns scores that determine access to travel, employment, housing, and basic services. This comprehensive tracking program, launched quietly in 2021, uses facial recognition cameras, internet monitoring, financial surveillance, and even neighbor reporting to generate behavioral scores for all Turkish citizens. Low scores result in immediate restrictions. These include flight bans, employment blacklisting, blocked bank accounts, and denial of government services including healthcare and education for children. The system tracks everything from social media posts and religious observance to shopping habits, friend associations, and political opinions expressed in private conversations. Citizens with scores below 600 face immediate travel restrictions and cannot leave Turkey, while scores below 400 result in complete social isolation, including restricted internet access and prohibited entry to public facilities. The monitoring network includes over 2.8 million surveillance cameras equipped with emotion recognition technology that evaluates facial expressions and body language for signs of disloyalty or dissatisfaction with government policies. Turkish citizens report constant anxiety knowing their every action affects their social score, leading to widespread behavioral modification and self-censorship that transforms daily life into a performance of loyalty. The system's algorithms remain completely secret, meaning citizens cannot understand why their scores decrease or how to improve them, creating, arbitrary punishment that can destroy lives without explanation or appeal. Here's the most terrifying aspect. The program plans expansion to include genetic information, family background, and psychological profiling to predict future disloyalty before it occurs, essentially criminalizing thought crimes before they happen. This makes Turkey's social credit system more comprehensive and invasive than China's equivalent program, creating a total surveillance state that monitors and controls every aspect of human behavior through technological authoritarianism. So, we've just discovered Turkey's most disturbing and shocking secrets, from virginity testing centers to underground cities to genetic citizenship testing. Which one shocked you the most? Have you ever experienced Turkey's hidden social control systems? Subscribe now for more mind-blowing revelations about countries hiding their darkest secrets. Next week we're exposing Saudi Arabia's surveillance state that makes Turkey look like a democracy.